There are some stories that unfold in the quiet corners of the world, whispered in hushed tones, almost too unbelievable to grasp. They are narratives woven from the most delicate threads of human emotion, love, and loyalty, yet stained with a darkness that can chill you to the bone. This isn't a fairy tale, nor is it a simple tragedy. It's a journey into the heart of a secret so profound, so deeply buried, that its mere existence threatens to unravel everything we believe about family, about trust, about the very nature of affection. What begins as an act of selfless devotion can, in the twisted corridors of the human psyche, morph into something unrecognizable, something that defies explanation and shakes the foundations of societal norms. Imagine, if you will, a small, unassuming town nestled deep within the American heartland. Not the kind of place that makes headlines, but one where life moves at a comfortable, predictable pace. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and secrets are hard to keep. Yet sometimes the biggest ones are the ones hidden in plain sight, veiled by a facade of normalcy. This is where our story begins, in a place called Willow Creek, a name that evokes a sense of tranquility, a gentle current. But beneath that placid surface, a torrent of hidden truths lay dormant, waiting for the precise moment to surge forth and drown everything in its path. Our central figure, a man named Elias Thorne, was, to all outward appearances, a pillar of the community. At 48, with a distinguished graying at his temples and eyes that held a certain weary kindness, he ran the town's only independent bookstore, a place filled with the comforting scent of old paper and new possibilities. He was known for his quiet generosity, his thoughtful recommendations, and the way he always seemed to have a comforting word for anyone who sought it. For years, Elias had lived a solitary life, seemingly content with his books and his routines. No wife, no children of his own. He was the quintessential bachelor, perhaps a little too absorbed in the worlds he read about to fully engage with the one around him. But then, the unthinkable happened, shattering the tranquil rhythm of his existence. It was a cold, unforgiving winter night, the kind where the wind howled like a hungry wolf and the snow fell thick and relentless, blanketing the town in an eerie silence. The news traveled fast, as it always does in small towns, carried on the frigid air like a mournful echo. A terrible accident, a car skidding on black ice, a family lost in an instant. The Andersons, Sarah and Mark, a young couple known for their vibrant energy and infectious laughter, were gone. They left behind a void, a collective gasp of disbelief and sorrow in Willow Creek. But they also left behind something else, something precious and fragile. A baby girl, barely 6 months old, miraculously spared from the wreckage. Her name was Lily. Elias, a distant cousin of Sarah, found himself unexpectedly thrust into a role he never imagined. There were no other immediate family members, no one else to step forward. The choice was clear, albeit daunting. He could allow this tiny, innocent life to be swept into the labyrinthine system of foster care, or he could open his home and his heart to her. It was a decision made not out of a sense of obligation, but from a profound, almost primal urge to protect. He remembered Sarah's bright smile, Mark's boisterous laugh. This baby, Lily, was their legacy, a living ember of their love. And so, with a quiet determination that surprised even himself, Elias Thorne became a father. He was admittedly clumsy at first. The gentle hands that once meticulously shelved first editions now fumbled with tiny buttons, struggling with the intricacies of infant care. Sleepless nights blurred into endless days, filled with the alien sounds of coos and cries, the overwhelming scent of baby powder and strained peas. Yet, through it all, a bond began to form, subtle at first, then undeniably powerful. He learned to decipher her babbling, to anticipate her needs, to find solace in the warmth of her tiny hand clutching his finger. Lily, with her wide, curious eyes and a smile that could melt the winter snow, became the sun around which Elias's world now revolved. The bookstore, once his sole passion, now merely served as a backdrop to the vibrant, demanding reality of parenthood. He read her stories in the evenings, his deep voice a soothing balm, sometimes making up fantastical tales of brave knights and mischievous sprites, their adventures unfolding within the quiet confines of their living room. Years turned into a decade, then another. Lily blossomed under Elias's careful, if unconventional, upbringing. She inherited her mother's vivacious spirit and her father's quiet intelligence. The town watched them, a peculiar but heartwarming sight. The reclusive bookseller and the bright, articulate girl he raised. They were a unit, inseparable, a testament to the transformative power of love, even love born from tragedy. Elias, now in his early 60s, carried the marks of time, the lines on his face etched deeper, his movements a little slower. But his eyes, when they rested on Lily, still held that same unwavering devotion, perhaps even more so. Lily, now a striking young woman of 22, was on the cusp of graduating from college, brimming with dreams and ambitions. She spoke of traveling, of seeing the world, of finding her own path, a path Elias had always encouraged her to forge. He had instilled in her a fierce independence, a thirst for knowledge, and an unwavering belief in her own capabilities. Their relationship was one of profound mutual respect and an unspoken understanding that transcended the typical father-daughter dynamic. There was a depth to their connection, a shared history of resilience and quiet affection, that made them truly unique in the eyes of Willow Creek. But as the days grew shorter and the autumn leaves began to fall, painting the town in hues of amber and rust, a subtle shift occurred. It began imperceptibly. A glance held a moment too long, a touch that lingered with an unfamiliar warmth, a conversation imbued with an unspoken tension. Elias started to look at Lily not just with the familiar pride of a father, but with something else, something indefinable, unsettling. It was a flicker in his eyes, a hesitant gesture, a silence that stretched between them, heavy with unspoken possibilities. Lily, too, began to feel it, a strange discomfort, a sense of unease that settled in her stomach like a cold stone. She attributed it to the impending changes, the bittersweet farewell of college, the looming uncertainty of her future. But the feeling persisted, a subtle discord in the harmonious symphony of their lives. Then, one crisp evening, as the first stars began to prick the darkening sky, casting long, ethereal shadows across the familiar contours of their living room, Elias sat Lily down. The air was thick with unspoken words, charged with an electric tension that made Lily's heart pound against her ribs. He cleared his throat, his voice a little hoarse, his gaze fixed on some point beyond her, as if summoning the courage for a monumental confession. He spoke of his love for her, a love that had grown and deepened with every passing year, a love that had shaped his very being. He spoke of the emptiness before she came into his life, the profound joy she had brought. His words were tender, heartfelt, undeniably sincere. But then he paused, his breath catching in his throat, and with a tremor in his voice, his eyes finally meeting hers, he uttered words that shattered the world as Lily knew it, words that would forever reframe their shared history, words that would plunge them both into an abyss of unspoken truths and unthinkable choices. "Lily, I want you to be my wife." The proposal hung in the air, a phantom limb of a moment that should have been joyful, romantic, but instead felt like a violent rupture. The familiar comfort of their home suddenly felt alien, the silence deafening, punctuated only by the frantic beat of Lily's own heart. The request wasn't born of delusion or madness, or even a sudden, inexplicable shift in Elias's affection. No, the chilling truth was far more insidious, far more deeply rooted in the very fabric of their shared existence. For years, she had been his daughter, his responsibility, his greatest joy. But in that single, shattering moment, the unspoken, the unspeakable, had been given voice. The proposal wasn't a question, but a declaration, a stark revelation that twisted the very foundation of their relationship into an unrecognizable, grotesque shape. The love he spoke of, so pure and paternal for so long, had clearly, secretly, evolved into something else entirely, something forbidden, something that defied the very definition of family. The air crackled with the weight of this unspoken transgression, and Lily, paralyzed by shock and a creeping sense of horror, could only stare, her mind racing, scrambling to comprehend the enormity of what had just been laid bare. This was not a father's love. This was something far darker, a secret desire that had festered in the shadows, waiting for its moment to emerge, to claim her. And with that revelation, the placid surface of Willow Creek was irrevocably broken, revealing the turbulent, dangerous currents that had always flowed beneath. The silence that followed Elias's proposal was not an empty one. It was a living, breathing entity, pulsating with unspoken fear and the dizzying shock that had seized Lily. Her breath caught in her throat, her lungs suddenly incapable of drawing air. The familiar patterns of the wallpaper seemed to warp, the comfortable furniture to loom with menace. This was not a dream, not a cruel joke. The sincerity in Elias's eyes, the tremor in his voice, the desperate plea embedded in his gaze, all confirmed the horrifying reality of his words. He had always been her protector, her guide, the anchor in her tumultuous world. To hear such a declaration from him, a man she had loved with the unquestioning devotion of a daughter, was akin to the ground beneath her feet dissolving into an endless void. The world tilted on its axis, and everything she had ever known, every secure memory, every loving gesture, was now cast in a grotesque, unsettling new light. She didn't scream, didn't cry. The shock was too profound, too paralyzing. Instead, a cold, calculating fear began to seep into her veins, displacing the warmth of affection. What did this mean? What had she missed? Had this feeling been simmering beneath the surface all along? A dark undercurrent she was too naive, too trusting, to perceive? The man who had patiently taught her to ride a bike, who had read her bedtime stories, who had held her hand through every scraped knee and heartbreak, was now looking at her with an intensity that twisted the very concept of parental love into something monstrous. Her mind raced, desperate to find an explanation, a rationalization for this unbearable situation. Perhaps he was unwell, perhaps he was lonely, but the conviction in his eyes dispelled any such comforting illusions. This was real. This was a desire he had harbored, silently, for years. Elias, seeing the terror etched on her face, the wide, disbelieving eyes, recoiled slightly, a shadow of regret flickering across his features. "Lily," he began, his voice hoarse, "I know this is a lot, but please try to understand. My love for you, it transcends everything. It's not what you think." His words were a desperate attempt to bridge the chasm that had suddenly opened between them, but they only served to deepen Lily's dread. What she thought was precisely what he had said, and the implications were too horrifying to contemplate. The very air in the room felt suffocating, thick with unspoken taboos. She needed to escape, to breathe, to think. Without a word, she rose, her legs shaky beneath her, and fled the room, the sound of her own frantic footsteps echoing in the sudden, cavernous silence of the house. For days, a strained, suffocating silence hung between them. Lily retreated into herself, locking herself in her room, emerging only for necessities, her meals picked at, her gaze averted. Elias respected her space, but the weight of his unspoken desire and her burgeoning fear was a palpable presence in the house. The bookstore, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison, its walls closing in on them both. Lily tried to process the unthinkable. Was she safe? Had she ever truly been safe? The man who had raised her, who had been her sole family for 2 decades, had just revealed a desire that shattered every boundary, every moral and ethical code. The betrayal wasn't just in the proposal itself, but in the years of unspoken deception, the quiet cultivation of a bond that, for him, had evidently taken a perverse, forbidden turn. One afternoon, desperate for answers, for any shred of clarity, Lily ventured into Elias's study, a room she had always associated with comfort and intellectual curiosity. It was filled with rare books, leather-bound journals, and the lingering scent of pipe tobacco. Her eyes, however, were not drawn to the neatly arranged shelves. Instead, they fell upon a small, antique wooden box tucked away on a high shelf, half hidden behind a collection of ancient maps. It was a box she had never seen before, intricately carved with swirling patterns, its brass clasp gleaming faintly in the dim light. A sudden, inexplicable compulsion urged her to reach for it. As her fingers closed around the smooth, cool wood, a jolt of apprehension shot through her. This felt important, forbidden. With trembling hands, she unlatched the clasp. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a collection of old photographs, yellowed with age, and a stack of letters tied with a delicate silk ribbon. Her heart hammered in her chest. The first photograph she picked up was a portrait of a young woman, strikingly beautiful, with eyes that held a familiar spark, her mother, Sarah. But something about the picture was different. It wasn't one of the cheerful, vibrant photos she knew. This one was older, more formal, and the woman in it seemed to possess a quiet melancholy, a hint of something fragile beneath her outward poise. And standing beside her, a younger, yet undeniably recognizable Elias Thorne. They were closer than she had ever imagined, their hands almost touching. This was not a photo of distant cousins. She opened one of the letters, its delicate script almost faded with time. The date on the letter was years before her birth, before the fateful accident. The sender was Sarah. The recipient was Elias. And the contents of the letter began to unravel a horrifying tapestry of secrets, one stitch at a time. It spoke of a desperate love, a clandestine affair, a love that was forbidden and fraught with danger. Sarah wrote of her fear, her confusion, her longing for a life she couldn't have with Elias. And then, a sentence, scrawled in a frantic hand, that made Lily gasp. "I'm pregnant, Elias, and it's yours, not Mark's." The world spun. Lily clutched the letter, her knuckles white. The cold dread that had settled in her stomach now intensified into a searing blaze of terror and betrayal. Elias wasn't her distant cousin. He wasn't just her adoptive father. He was her biological father. And her mother, Sarah, had been having an affair with him, an affair that resulted in Lily's very existence. Mark, the man she had always believed to be her father, was a cuckold, unknowingly raising another man's child. The pieces of the puzzle, so long fragmented and scattered, were now snapping into place with chilling precision, forming a picture that was far more sinister than any nightmare. The proposal, now viewed through this new, grotesque lens, took on an even more disturbing meaning. It wasn't just a father proposing to his adoptive daughter. It was a biological father, a man who had concealed the truth of her parentage for 2 decades, now seeking to claim her as his wife. The love he had spoken of, the devotion, the careful nurturing, it was all a macabre charade, a twisted perversion of the paternal bond, meticulously constructed to conceal a far deeper, far more unsettling agenda. He hadn't just raised her from birth. He had raised his own child, born of a secret affair, with the intention, perhaps, of one day making her his bride. The letters revealed more. Sarah's growing desperation, her pleas to Elias to acknowledge their child, his steadfast refusal, his insistence on secrecy to protect his reputation and her marriage. They spoke of a silent agreement, a pact born of fear and social pressure. The car accident, once a tragic twist of fate, now seemed to carry a different weight. Had there been an element of relief for Elias? Relief that the secret of Lily's paternity would remain buried with Mark and Sarah? Or was it simply a convenient tragedy that allowed him to finally claim what he had always believed was his, albeit under the guise of an act of kindness? Lily's head swam with the implications. The man she had adored, the man she had trusted implicitly, was a master of deception, a weaver of lies that had defined her entire life. Every memory, every cherished moment, was now tainted with the bitter taste of deceit. Her childhood, once a beacon of security, now felt like a carefully constructed cage, designed to keep her close, to keep her oblivious to the truth. She felt trapped, utterly alone in a world that had suddenly become unrecognizable, distorted by the shadows of a buried past. The gentle, kind bookseller Elias Thorne was not who she thought he was. He was a man with a chilling secret, a forbidden desire, and a past that had just reached out to claim its due, dragging her into its dark embrace. And the true horror was only just beginning to unfold. The answers she sought had only brought more questions, more terror, and a terrifying realization. She was in far greater danger than she could have ever imagined. The revelation of the letters was a seismic shift, an earthquake that shattered the carefully constructed facade of Lily's life. The man she had known as her adoptive father, her devoted guardian, was in fact her biological father, a man who had orchestrated a lifetime of deception. The implications were chilling, twisting every memory, every tender moment, into something sinister. Elias's proposal, once merely an alarming proposition, now reeked of an ancient, forbidden claim, a perverse sense of ownership. Lily felt a cold rage begin to simmer beneath her shock, a primal scream trapped in her throat. She had been a pawn, a carefully cultivated secret, raised not by an altruistic guardian, but by a man who had chosen to conceal her true parentage while harboring a desire that defied every natural boundary. She confronted him that same evening, the antique box clutched in her trembling hands, the faded letters spilling from its depths like damning evidence. The air in the study, usually filled with the comforting scent of books, was now heavy with accusation and despair. Elias, caught utterly off guard, his face draining of color, looked like a man who had seen a ghost. His composure, usually so unshakable, crumbled before her eyes. He stammered, tried to deny, to explain, but his words were hollow, drowned out by the undeniable proof in Lily's grasp. "Lily, please, let me explain," he pleaded, his voice raspy, desperate. "It wasn't like that. It was complicated. Complicated." Lily's voice, though trembling, was laced with an icy fury she didn't know she possessed. "You let me believe for 22 years that I was an orphan, that my parents died in an accident, that you were my kind, generous relative, all while knowing you were my father, and then you proposed to me? What kind of twisted game is this, Elias?" Her words were sharp, cutting, fueled by a lifetime of concealed truth. The pain was excruciating, a physical ache in her chest. The trust she had placed in him, so absolute, was now irrevocably shattered, replaced by a gaping wound of betrayal. Elias slumped into his armchair, his shoulders hunched, the weight of his lies finally crushing him. He began to speak, not in the measured, calm tones she was used to, but in a torrent of desperate confessions, his voice raw with a mix of shame and a twisted, possessive love. He spoke of his youth, his clandestine affair with Sarah, a woman already engaged to his best friend, Mark. He painted a picture of reckless passion, a love that burned brightly but was doomed from the start. She was everything to me, he whispered, his eyes distant, lost in the past. But she was meant for Mark. They had their lives planned. I couldn't destroy that. And when she told me about you, about being pregnant, panicked. We both did. He confessed to the agonizing decision to keep Lily's paternity a secret, to let Mark believe she was his. He rationalized it as an act of protection, of preserving Sarah's reputation, of shielding Lily from the scandal and shame that would undoubtedly follow. He spoke of the unbearable pain of watching his own child grow up, calling another man father. His voice cracked with what sounded like genuine anguish. Every day, Lily, was a torment. To see you, to hold you, to love you, but never to truly claim you. When the accident happened, it was a tragedy, yes, a terrible loss, but it was also a door, a way for me to finally be your father, truly, without the lies. Lily listened, her mind reeling. The narrative he was weaving was one of profound sacrifice, of a love so deep it bordered on obsession, a love that had driven him to a lifetime of silent suffering. But then came the chilling pivot. And as you grew, Elias continued, his gaze, once filled with anguish, now hardening with a terrifying intensity, I saw more and more of Sarah in you, your spirit, your intelligence, your beauty. And my love for you, it changed, it deepened. It became something more than just paternal. It became the love of a man for a woman. I couldn't bear the thought of you leaving, of finding someone else, of our connection being severed. I raised you, Lily. I shaped you. You are a part of me intrinsically, and I want us to be together always, not just as father and daughter, but as partners, as husband and wife. The full, horrifying extent of his delusion, his depravity, was laid bare. He hadn't just concealed her paternity. He had meticulously cultivated a relationship, a bond, with the ultimate goal of making her his consort. The protection was a cage, the love a twisted form of possession. This wasn't sacrifice. It was a long-game strategy, a slow, insidious grooming. The air grew thick with the stench of his corrupted affection. He saw her not as an independent being, but as an extension of himself, a prize to be claimed after years of patient waiting. "You are insane," Lily whispered, the words barely audible, but laced with absolute disgust. Her fear solidified into a desperate resolve. She had to escape. She couldn't stay another moment in that house, with that man, surrounded by the ghosts of his monstrous secrets. But Elias, lost in his self-justifying narrative, seemed not to hear her. He reached for her, his hand outstretched, a look of desperate yearning on his face. "We can be happy, Lily, happier than anyone. We'll leave Willow Creek. We'll go somewhere no one knows us. We can build a new life, just the two of us. Our love is unique, special. It's meant to be." His words, intended to soothe, only amplified her horror. His proposal wasn't a fleeting madness. It was the culmination of a deeply ingrained, pathological desire. He truly believed in the twisted sanctity of their relationship. Lily recoiled, scrambling backward, her eyes darting towards the door. The familiar surroundings had become a threat, every shadow a potential snare. This wasn't her home anymore. It was a trap. Suddenly, a realization, cold and stark, pierced through her panic. Elias had not chosen to reveal the truth himself. He had kept it hidden for years. He had only confessed because she had discovered the letters. What else was he hiding? What other depths of deception existed? A chilling thought crossed her mind. Had the accident, the one that claimed her mother and Mark, been truly an accident? Or had Elias, in his obsessive desire to claim her, played a more sinister role? The thought was too terrible to fully form, but it gnawed at her, a tiny, insidious worm of doubt. She had to get out. But as she made a move towards the door, Elias, with a surprising burst of speed, blocked her path. His eyes, usually kind, were now burning with a desperate, almost feral intensity. "Where are you going, Lily? We need to talk this through. You're confused. You'll understand. Our destiny is intertwined." His voice, though still pleading, held an undertone of steel, a possessive edge that sent a shiver down her spine. The mask of the gentle bookseller had fallen, revealing the chilling truth of a man consumed by a forbidden love, a love so warped it threatened to consume them both. Lily realized, with a jolt of pure terror, that her escape would not be easy. The gentle guardian had become her captor, and the battle for her freedom and her very sanity had just begun. The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in, as the full weight of his obsession pressed down upon her. She was alone, trapped, facing a man who believed, truly believed, that her life was inextricably bound to his, no matter the cost. The air crackled with Elias's possessive declaration, his words a suffocating net closing around Lily. The gentle, melancholic bookseller was gone, replaced by a desperate, menacing figure, his eyes burning with an almost insane conviction. Lily's mind raced, a whirlwind of terror and grim determination. She couldn't reason with him. His reality was twisted beyond repair. Her only option was escape, and she knew, with a chilling certainty, that it wouldn't be easy. The man who had once nurtured her life now sought to consume it entirely. As Elias advanced, his hand outstretched, Lily reacted on instinct. She grabbed a heavy, antique paperweight from his desk, a solid brass globe, and swung it with all her might. It connected with a dull thud against his temple. Elias reeled back, a gasp escaping his lips, his hand instinctively flying to the wound. The suddenness of her attack, born of pure desperation, had caught him completely off guard. It was enough. Without a second thought, Lily bolted. She burst out of the study, through the living room, and flung open the front door. The cool night air hit her face like a shock, a desperate breath of freedom. She didn't look back, didn't hesitate. She ran, her bare feet pounding on the cold pavement, the familiar streets of Willow Creek blurring into a terrifying labyrinth. Every shadow seemed to hold Elias. Every whisper of wind carried his voice. She just ran, propelled by a primal fear, her heart threatening to explode from her chest. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to get away. The town, once her safe haven, now felt like a vast, open trap. She ran until her lungs burned, until her legs threatened to give out. Finally, breathless and disoriented, she stumbled into the familiar glow of the Willow Creek Police Department. The lights inside seemed impossibly bright, a beacon in her terrifying night. She burst through the doors, disheveled, weeping, and barely coherent, her story tumbling out in fragmented, panicked gasps. The police, initially skeptical of her wild tale, soon began to take her seriously as she brandished the crumpled, yellowed letters. The evidence, though circumstantial, was compelling. The immediate investigation at Elias's bookstore yielded nothing further. He was gone, vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the overturned chair and the faint scent of old paper. But the truth of the letters was undeniable, corroborated by old town records and whispers from the few remaining elders who vaguely remembered the scandal of Sarah's early marriage. The story of Elias Thorne, the quiet, respected bookseller, quickly became a chilling local legend, a dark stain on the town's quaint facade. The news spread like wildfire, painting a grotesque picture of forbidden love and a lifetime of hidden depravity. Lily's life, once stable and predictable, was now irrevocably shattered. The man she had called father was a monster, a manipulator, a ghost haunting her every memory. The town that had watched her grow up, once so familiar and comforting, now felt alien, its kind faces replaced by whispers and wary glances. She was no longer just Lily, the bright young woman from Willow Creek. She was Lily, the girl raised by her biological father who then proposed to her. The public scrutiny was relentless, the sympathy mixed with morbid curiosity. She couldn't stay. With the help of a sympathetic social worker, Lily severed all ties with Willow Creek. She changed her name, moved halfway across the country, and began the agonizing process of rebuilding her life, piece by painful piece. It was a long, arduous journey. The trauma of her past was a constant shadow, an invisible weight on her shoulders. She struggled with trust, with intimacy, with the very notion of family. The love she had known was tainted, twisted into something horrific. How could she ever truly trust again, when the deepest love she had ever experienced was built on such a foundation of deceit and forbidden desire? Years passed. The news of Elias Thorne faded from the headlines, his whereabouts unknown. Some believed he had fled the country, others that he had taken his own life, unable to face the public shame. The mystery surrounding him only deepened the chilling legend. Lily, however, never truly escaped him. He existed in the quiet moments, in the fleeting shadows, in the sudden jolts of fear when a stranger looked at her too long. The love he had professed, so twisted and pervasive, had left an indelible scar on her soul. Yet, amidst the darkness, a flicker of resilience remained. Lily found solace in the anonymity of a large city, in building new connections, in finding purpose in her work. She never married, never had children. The idea of forming such deep bonds, of trusting another with her heart, remained a daunting, almost impossible challenge. But she learned to live, to function, to find moments of peace and even joy. She dedicated herself to advocating for others who had suffered manipulation and abuse, finding a powerful voice in her own quiet strength. She used her experiences, not to dwell in victimhood, but to illuminate the insidious nature of hidden control and to empower others to recognize and escape it. Her story is a stark, haunting reminder that the most profound deceptions can wear the most benevolent disguises. It speaks to the insidious power of obsession, the way love, when warped by forbidden desires and a desperate need for control, can transform into a terrifying force. It is a testament to the fact that sometimes the greatest monsters are not found in the shadows, but in the most trusted, seemingly loving relationships. And it leaves us with an uncomfortable question. How well do we truly know those closest to us? What secrets lie buried beneath the surface, waiting for the opportune moment to erupt and shatter our carefully constructed realities? This story isn't just a tale of betrayal and escape. It's a profound exploration of identity, trust, and the long, arduous road to healing when the very foundations of your existence are ripped away. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that even the most cherished bonds can be cloaked in darkness, and that sometimes the most profound acts of love are not those that claim possession, but those that bravely choose to break free. If this story has made you reflect, if it has touched something within you, please take a moment. Hit the like button to let us know you want to see more deep and emotional stories like this. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any other tales of untold mysteries, hidden tragedies, and the incredible strength of the human spirit. We have so much more to share. Thank you for listening.